I thought I'd do something slightly different with this video that everyone should be able to find helpful. I'm going to go through the places where I get all my stats and data from to not only help me make these videos, but also to help improve my game with FPL. So if you think that's going to be useful, please stick around. All right, first up, I just wanted to go through what I think is one of the most valuable Twitter accounts I've come across so far in the fantasy football space, and that is at RobTFPL on Twitter. You can see well, it's X now, isn't it? You can see his @ below. What he's done is produced some projected goal involvement numbers based on available spread betting markets. So what this basically means is this is the bookmaker's view of the predicted number of goals/assists that the top players in the Premier League are going to get. Now, why is this a useful projection? Well, betting companies and gambling companies invest millions and millions into projection algorithms and maths, right? It's probably, in my mind, the most, the best, because they've invested so much into it. Because ultimately, setting the odds to make profit is where betting companies win, right? So they, in turn, will want to be able to predict the outcomes with the most accuracy as possible and put in the most money to do so, right? I mean, that's my view on it. I think it's probably the best way to get sort of projected outcomes. And as you can see here, Haaland is expected to get 27.5 goals, 6 assists. Salah, what's that? 18.8 goals, 9.8 assists. Saka, 16.8, 10.8. You can see them there. So top 5 players in the league, Haaland, Salah, Saka, Palmer, Son. And you can see the rest of the players on the list here. There are a few that are highlighted. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. Rob T, he updates these numbers almost daily at the moment. And the players that are sort of highlighted are just new entries or changed numbers, right? So changed from the last time that he tweeted. So there's nothing really to worry about. And you can see the rankings there. Based on this, you feel free to pause the video, look at it yourself for the rankings. But yeah, based on this, and the projected expected returns that these players are going to get, this might change your mind maybe on some of the players you're looking to pick in your team. So what we saw there was every player in every position ranked, but I thought it would also be quite useful because he's tweeted it to look at the defenders. Now this data comes from the same means, projected spread betting markets, right? But this is a focus on defenders, and you can see the top projected defenders to get returns. I'm not going to go through them all. I mean, you can see them all on the list anyway. But we've got Trent, Porro, Trippier, Robertson, James, Martin, and Guardiola as the top sort of 7 defenders expected to get returns. Now, looking at this list, the best 4.5, 4.5 million defenders. There are plenty of them in this game that are pickable. The best in terms of projected returns is 8 Nori at the moment. Martin at 5 looks pretty good. Reece James could eventually be good value. Obviously, he's going to miss the start of the season with his suspension. Robertson, he's a little bit behind Trent. Trippier, Porro, and Trent are the top guys. I mean, again, similar to what we did on the last list. You can pause this and look for yourself. But, yes, picking defenders in FPL, you want to be conscious of picking ones that are most likely to keep clean sheets. But also, we all know fullbacks in FPL are gold dust, right? A defender that not only keeps clean sheets, but also gets attacking returns, going to be some of the best defenders in the game, right? And hopefully this projection from Rob T will help you decide exactly that. Next up then, I've got a couple of sources for clean sheet odds projections. First up, we're going to look at Elevenify. Now, I found Elevenify really helpful during the Euros, not only for my content, but also for picking my own team because the projections are actually really quite good and accurate. Now, they also project the clean sheet odds for the first 6 game weeks for every team in the Premier League. And I'm not going to go through in detail every single team because we'll be here for ages. But combining this, if you travel back to the Rob T FPL stats for defenders with expected goal involvements, combine that, the best defenders for attacking returns combined with the best defenders for keeping clean sheets should help you pick defenders that are going to score the most points in FPL, right? I'm looking top teams for clean sheets over the next 6 match days. They're ranked here: Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, Aston Villa, and Crystal Palace. One thing this is suggesting to me as well, and there aren't really many projection metrics for goalkeeper saves, for example, but what it's suggesting to me is that you look at all of these teams. Crystal Palace have 2 4.5 million defenders that could well start for them, right? Dean Henderson and Sam Johnson. The first choice Crystal Palace goalkeeper, I think, is going to be the highest scoring goalkeeper in FPL this season. That's just my projection. Crystal Palace look, albeit they've had a few sloppy mistakes in pre-season, under their new manager, they look really, really strong. And over the first 6 game weeks, they're the 5th ranked team for clean sheet odds. And you look above them, apart from Martinez, who I believe is 5.5 million. Alisson, Edison, and Raya are all premium goalkeepers. Looking at clean sheet odds, Crystal Palace have the best of the rest. And I think goalkeeper-wise, Dean Henderson, Sam Johnson, whoever starts out of that lot at 4.5 million, I think is probably going to be the best value goalkeeper in the game. That's probably the key takeaway from this one. What I'll do, I'm not going to suggest defenders that are worth picking. I'm not going to suggest a big list. You can probably decide that for yourself based on these clean sheet odds and expected goal involvement. So based on those two things, we're going to ask you a question to answer in the comments. Who do you think are the best 3 defenders in the game for a combination of clean sheet odds and expected goal involvement? Maybe actually tell me the best premium defender, the best mid-price defender, and the best cheap defender, 4.5 and below for cheap. And that might help you decide who to pick in your team. We also have the same odds from Drafthound. They differ a little bit different. They differ a little bit differently, I was about to say. I guess that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? They're obviously different models based on different algorithms and projections. But I also find the Drafthound clean sheet odds really easy to look at. I mean, you set your own preference really with these two. I'll leave a link to Elevenify in the description, and I'll leave a link to Drafthound as well. Both sites equally usable as one another. I probably just prefer Drafthound for clean sheet odds. They're my stalwart for last season. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they're too far off. The one sort of difference you can have is Elevenify ranks them for the first 6 game weeks by team, so most clean sheets over the first 6 game weeks. Whereas Drafthound, you can only rank it game week by game week. So you can see here, I've ranked it game week 1 clean sheet odds at the moment. Arsenal coming out on top, 55. Liverpool, Newcastle, Man United, Tottenham. You can see it there, and you kind of have to work out the order yourself in other game weeks. So yeah, these clean sheet odds in combination with Elevenify, in combination with the defenders' expected goal involvements, etc., should really help you nail on the defenders to be starting in each game if you've got a bit of a benching headache, for example, or just in general, the defenders to be picking in your team for game week 1, and also, of course, the goalkeepers. Another really useful thing that Elevenify have produced is set piece ratings. Now, it's a bit of a different kind of thing to get your head around to most sort of fantasy football stats and statistics. What it also does, basically, is it shows you who's going to be the penalty and free kick takers. Now, given that we're probably going to have some transfers right before now in the start of the season, things may change. Bournemouth, for example, Solanke looks like he could potentially be joining Spurs. He's not in the starting 11 or even the full squad of Bournemouth's pre-season friendly at the time of making this video. I'm on Sunday the 4th of August at the moment, and he's not made the Bournemouth team. So he could potentially be on his way to Spurs, meaning he might not be the Bournemouth penalty taker anymore. Same with Tony, he could be off. That sort of takes him away from being the penalty taker. Then if Solanke joins Spurs, could he take pens off Son? That's a question. But what this does basically is, based on the stats that they put up last season and historically, it shows how dangerous each team is from set pieces as well. I'm not going to go through them all, but teams like Arsenal, Liverpool, West Ham, Brentford, for example, proven to be the most kind of dangerous teams for potential to score from set pieces. And this should also, factor into the kind of players you pick, because I don't know, I'm thinking someone like Gabriel, defender from Arsenal, a lot of goal threat from set pieces. And Arsenal very good at set pieces, right? Lewis Dunk, who I would say offers really good goal threat from set pieces. However, Brighton don't appear to be all that effective from them. And with Pascal Gross leaving, they don't really have a penalty or free... penalties with João Pedro, but a free kick or corner taker. So maybe that leaves a little bit of a hole for Brighton there. But like I said, I'm not going to go through all these stats because there's just so many to go through. Maybe if you wanted, you could pause the video to look at them all yourself. But in terms of set pieces, I'd say roughly a third of all goals in the Premier League probably come from a set piece. So it's really important in my mind to know who the set pieces are, the teams that are more dangerous, less dangerous from set pieces, and that should also factor in your decision making when picking players. Another useful bit of data I like to look at is just in general expected points. There are various models across the world and across the FPL sort of space predicting player points. We've got FPL Review. FPL Review also offers suggested transfers as well in their free model. So once the game gets started and they've completely completed their model, which hasn't been fully completed yet, they only got really the top players in there, you can input your team to the tool and it will suggest you the best transfers to make based on the expected points that other players have. For example, say, I don't know, you start with Odegaard in your midfield, it might suggest you Saka because he's due to get more points, something like that. Drafthound operates in a very similar fashion. Like I said, there's a link to Drafthound in the description below. I made a weekly video series last season, the Ultimate Guide, where I went through the top players for expected points by position for the game week in question, and then the consecutive 3 game weeks afterwards. I find it a really useful way of picking out who should probably be the best players to bring into your team. And yeah, no exception this season. You can see there, those are the top players for the first 3 game weeks. FF Hub, Fantasy Football Hub, also offers the same feature. I'll leave a link to all 3 sources in the description. If you wanted to sign up to Fantasy Football Hub, I'll talk to you a little bit more about the other tools they've got. I'll leave a link in the description where you can get 50% off a sign up courtesy of me. But yeah, these are the 3 sources that I like to use for expected points. So FPL Review, Drafthound, and the Fantasy Football Hub website. Finally, I wanted to just talk about the Fantasy Football Hub AI team rating because I've personally found it really useful and showed it off at every opportunity when I've done my team selection video, because it's really, I find it really helpful to get a model's opinion on your team, and you can certainly do that. This is my latest draft as per my most recent draft video. Miguel, Guardiola, Livramento, Barco, Salah's captain, Gordon, Eze, and Kunku, Haaland, Isak, and Wood. This team gets a 95% AI rating. Few suggested transfers here and there that I might take on board, might not, depending on how stubborn I'm going to be. 64.6 projected points, and you also get a rating for that specific game week as well. So a really useful tool to input any draft you're making to give you an idea of, you know, projected outcomes and rating against them and some potential transfers you could make to it. And finally, I wanted to look at a website where I basically get all of my stats from regarding players. It's Fbref. I will leave a link in the description for you to see it. I will just for random, I'll put in Mo Salah. Let's look at Mo Salah as a player and his stats. So we search for Mo Salah. Tells you a little bit of a bio about him. And you scroll down, and this is his overall stats and similar players according to stats, etc. And then you have domestic league standard stats, right? And then we're looking at Premier League 23-24. That's last season. And you get all the in-detail stats of all of his recent seasons that he's been a professional footballer, basically. So some leagues, well, 2017, 2016 Serie A and below didn't really have the expected data, but you get, it's just gone. You get a view basically of all of the goals, assists, penalty kicks, all those sorts of stats. And then you also get running totals of the expected goals, expected assists, etc. Non-penalty expected goals, expected assists. And then per 90 minutes, non-penalties, expected goals, assists, etc. So yeah, I mean, when you're looking at players, I think this is a really useful tool to use because you can also do a comparison. So in one tab, you could have Salah, in another tab, you could have Son, you know, if you're deciding between, this is hypothetical, right? I'm not saying you'll necessarily be deciding between Salah and Son, but you can compare the 2 players in real in-depth detail around their stats. For me, one of the stats that I really like to look at is expected goals and assists per 90 minutes. That's something that I really like to look at. And Salah last season was 1.17. So that is expected returns per 90, basically. So the amount of attacking returns that Salah is expected to get per 90 minutes in a season, right? And it's 1.17. So that means every time that Salah steps out onto a football pitch, assuming that he plays 90 minutes a game, he's expected to get more than 1 return, which suggests that he is an awesome asset in FPL, right? And season on season, he's in and around that 1 mark. 0.98 in 2017-18, 0.82, you know, you can see it all there. I mean, he's a fantastic asset, and you can kind of see that in Fbref. Obviously, you know, Salah might not be the one player you want to look at because he's sort of a banker, really good option. Most people are going to have him in your team, right? But maybe if you use Fbref yourself, try and compare maybe Watkins and Isak, and that will really help you decide who is the best player in terms of underlying numbers and overall stats. Because ultimately, if a player gets injured a little more than others, etc., in a season, rather than looking at the total stats, it might be better to look at the per 90 stats, you know, the amount of time, which is drawn up on the amount of time that a player spends on the pitch, you know, because if, say, Ollie Watkins plays all 38 games in a season, I feel like I'm rambling now, but there is a point here. Ollie Watkins plays all 38 games in a season and scores 20 goals, whereas Isak plays, I don't know, 25 games and scores 19 goals, something like that. Over per 90 minutes, Isak could still work out to be a better option. You just have to trust that he's going to be fit for the season onward. So that's something to bear in mind when looking at FBref. But yeah, I find it really useful when I show players that I want to buy. I put goals, assists, expected goals, expected assists, expected returns per 90 for the attackers, because I think those are the key stats to factor in, and I get them from FBref. So I'll leave a link to that in the description. Check it out for yourself. All right, and that's the end of the video. A bit different than my usual ones. Hopefully not too boring. It was a bit of a stat overload, but I mean, most people that play fantasy football are probably into their stats and want to know as much as they can about sources to get information from, etc. By the way, this isn't a completely conclusive list. You know, there are probably others that I'm missing. And to be honest, I'm open to learning about new sources of data and stats as well. So if you have any and want to share it with me and the community, feel free to put it in the comments as well. Hopefully you learned something from this video, you know, with a potential source of stats, etc. I mean, certainly these are all the stats that I use to make my videos. So if you enjoy my videos in general, you know, this is what goes behind them. So if you did find it useful and enjoyed it, please leave me a like rating. Like I said, let me know in the comments, you know, if there are any different sources of stats that you like to use that you think are useful that you want to share with me. And finally, if you enjoyed the video and want to see more from me, you can subscribe to the Goal to Goal channel, which should be just there on your screen. Thank you very, very much for watching. I'll catch you in my next video.